Tell you about my dog. My dog is a demon.
Hi, Chelsea. Welcome to the pod.
Hey, Rod. Thanks for having me.
I'm very happy that you're going to be the first guest of this show. I think you have a very special story to tell. People usually introduce you through Peter's story. Who are you today in your own words?
Yeah, I would say I'm still figuring that out. In the wake of losing Peter, I learned new things about myself, and I've learned a lot of life lessons very quickly. I think losing Peter, for better or for worse, brought on a lot of life lessons that might take people decades to learn, if not for going through something traumatic.
Right.
I will say I'm just a different person than I am, or I was before Peter, and that may not show through with people who knew me before and after losing Peter, but I certainly think about that every day.
And before we dive into the bigger, heavier parts of your story, what's bringing you joy these days?
Rod, you caught me in a tough time. I was doged, and so I got a new job after 8 long months of unemployment, and I still have a lot of feelings about that. And I luckily got a new job, so that's bringing me joy. But it's bittersweet to have to leave DC to go pursue that job. So, my dog brings me joy.
Hugo.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about Hugo? Who is he?
Hugo Spots. He's my almost, he's about 4.5, little over 4.5 years old now. It was Peter and I's little son, and he's, still mine. And he is a Dalmatian. He is a special needs boy. I like to call him my little lemon. Peter and I used to say he's very lucky that he had 2 veterinarians as parents, but he is a sweetheart and always there. And he's my little buddy. We just do life together.
Yeah, to anyone who's watching, he is indeed a lemon, but he is the best lemon in the world.
Yeah, he wears it well.
Let's rewind a little bit before the advocacy, before the loss. Can you tell me about how you and Peter met?
Yeah. So Peter and I met in vet school, and I had just met a mutual friend of ours over the summer because we did the same international research trip. And so she introduced me to him when I went to study with them one day in their study group. And so I remember walking into her living room, and Peter was there sitting on the couch, and I was like immediately taken with him. Unfortunately, he had a girlfriend at the time, so I kept my feelings, to myself for the next 2 years. The 3 of us really grew in our friendship, grew closer. Mm-hmm. We ended up living together in our clinical year, and Peter and I just bonded a lot during that time, and then finally things kind of came to a head after we were living together for quite a while, actually. But my plan, I really didn't think he had any interest in me because he's very, very good poker face, I guess. So I was just planning on graduating and telling him right as we graduated, and then at the time I was going to move to Zimbabwe. So I was like, I'll tell him and then I'll leave, and then I can just wipe my hands of that. But luckily, that's not how it panned out.
He is a very handsome man.
He was, yeah.
When you first met him, did he have a beard or no beard?
He had no beard.
No beard.
Yeah,
interesting.
Maybe he had a shadow. Yeah, in his earlier vet school days, he didn't always have a beard.
Really?
Yeah. And especially in undergrad, like you look at pictures of him from before I knew him, and he doesn't always have a beard either, but he had a beard, and luckily he never shaved it. He was very handsome. Yeah.
Yeah. That beard definitely, definitely made him more handsome.
Yeah.
What about him, when you remember him, still makes you smile?
His calm, his, you don't have a lot of people in your life who can, you can truly 100% look at as your support, your net, like, your like partner in crime. His joy that he got from creativity, like from board games, and how he loved to guide people through really complicated board games, and then his joy that he got when he had someone like he had tricked them or like walked them into a scenario in D&D. I guess he was a dungeon master for a group of our vet school friends. He just really gained a lot of happiness from critical thinking in a fun way. And I think that's something that I really appreciated in him.
Yeah, D&D is very complicated.
Yeah.
And, we talked about campaigns when we spent time in the EOR. I think one of my biggest regrets is that I never got to spend time with him doing that. And also playing video games.
Yeah.
He was like, he was like the big nerd. And I really love that about him, that he would, not shy away from talking about this thing.
Yeah. That's the other thing about Peter. He was very authentic. And I think that, that like kind of slips under the radar when I get asked this question. But I think that was like the biggest thing for me, is how unabashedly himself he seemed to be.
Very authentic. When I first met Peter, he was a very quiet man, very shy.
Yeah.
And then, but they put us, Jay and I, together, doing surgeries all day with him. And as I got to know him every day, I would ask him questions. I would go to him for dating advice. I would go for him for any kind of advice. And, I had stupid questions, and never once. And I think this is the great thing about him, was that in this world where we feel judged, I never felt judged by him.
Yeah.
And you could tell that, like, the whole hospital would go to him for anything. And you never once felt judged.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was very authentic, very very open.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The no judgment thing, that definitely got me too. First met, and then our friendship grew and stuff. And yeah, he was the most non-judgmental person I've ever met.
When you both graduated vet school, and you guys became doctors, how did sharing veterinary medicine shape your relationship?
I felt like it was a very important part of, like, just a lot of people in school say, oh my God, I can't imagine dating another veterinarian or being with another veterinarian. And then when Peter and I were together, it's like, I couldn't imagine it any other way, because there's so many scenarios that we will understand that like no other person will understand, because they haven't been through vet school. They aren't a veterinarian practicing. They aren't, they just aren't familiar with like the intimate, like ins and outs of the field. And to not be able to talk about that stuff with somebody, it would feel like a big gap in a relationship, I think. And so, it took center stage because we graduated together, and then we went and we worked in the same hospital. So, in our first year out, when we're trying to find our bearings and learning and fighting imposter syndrome and making mistakes and moving forward with that, it had a huge role in our relationship.
Working together, what was that like?
It was great.
It was great.
Yeah. I liked it. I just liked, we weren't like in the same exam room every day. It was just nice that, if I was in surgery, I just was comforted by the fact that like Peter was upstairs in rooms, or other way around. Like he had a really hard spay one morning, and I scrubbed in and helped him. And so we did that together, and that meant a lot to him. We just like had each other's backs in that setting, and, helped each other work through challenges. And yeah, I I don't know if I don't want to think about like how my first year would have gone without like having that in my professional setting and in my personal setting. Yeah.
Did you guys ever play hooky from work? Like, did you ever call out together?
God, no. We gave so much of our lives to that hospital. It was a very demanding schedule. We worked 5 days a week, like 10 to 11 hours a day, and then on call one weekend a month, and then or like one Saturday a month we worked, and then we were on call like various times throughout a month. We never played hooky. I mean, the pandemic happened, so then we, even doubled down with the hospital. But
and where was this hospital?
It was in Brookings, Oregon. It's right on the border of California. Actually, it's the last coastal town before California.
And what drew you guys to go there?
I was drawn to go there from previous times I'd been in Oregon doing externships, and I'm from New Hampshire, and I've traveled pretty extensively. Oregon was the only state I had gone through that felt like I could call it home. I think because it's very similar to New Hampshire in a lot of ways. And so I just have wanderlust, and I asked Peter, like, where can we move? Like, where do you want to go after school? Obviously I wasn't going to Zimbabwe anymore. And, he was down to go wherever. So, we were looking, and, I had an interview with a exotics place in Indiana. This hospital was an 8-doctor practice before we joined. And, or maybe it was a 6-doctor practice and we became 8, but they tell you in clinics, go to a hospital that has a lot of doctors that can mentor you, and you can get different opinions, medical opinions, and you can kind of shape your own medicine.
Right.
So this really fit all of the boxes, and he was down to do it. And then when they extended an offer to me, and Peter was having issues finding a job in the same area because it's so rural. So the only place he could find a job was like 2 hours away. And once we started talking about that with my like future boss, they were just like, why don't you just also come work for us? So that's how we got there. Yeah.
He was like your muse, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is that what muses do? I'll just like, that was part of him being so supportive. He really, I'm an ambitious person. Peter, I'll say, and this isn't like a dig at him, he was less ambitious, more happy with just being. And he said his big goal in life was to go to vet school, and he wanted to work with cattle. He wanted to work with livestock, and he had done that. And so he really put my career goals first. So yeah, he was down to go anywhere with me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When did you guys move to DC, and why?
We moved in August 2020. I, did, for all the working with Peter and how nice that was at the hospital, I did not enjoy my job. I knew that I wanted to do policy when I graduated, but, we just spent the last 4 years learning how to be a clinical veterinarian, and it's not that veterinarians don't graduate and just go straight into a non-traditional role, but it's not advised. Everyone's like, oh, just get your feet under you in your first year and then go do whatever you want. So that's what I was trying to do. But and it might have been a combination of things. The pandemic started. We were very far from home. It didn't really pan out the way I thought it would to be, on the opposite coast from our family. I was very homesick. So, and I was having, mental health struggles. So, I don't even know if it was completely vet med's fault, but we moved to DC because I was like, I'm going to go do the thing I want to do, and that's policy. So I applied for a fellowship that was in DC.
And did you always wanted to go into policy? Was your
since my like second year of vet school, I want to say, was when it really started being an anchor in my mind. I became a veterinarian because I wanted to work with wildlife.
Okay.
I never wanted to work in a traditional vet med setting in a small animal clinic. So it was either going to be, I was going to work very high level at the policy scale, or I was going to work on the ground, like in Zimbabwe, doing anti-poaching efforts and things. And after a few international trips where I helped with anti-poaching efforts, I decided, I saw a lot of trafficking firsthand, like trafficking scenarios. And I learned that, it's a lot of money, work, and time to maybe protect, 6 rhinos when you're dehorning them. And then the horns will grow back, and then the poachers may shoot them anyway because they're spiteful or things like that.
Right.
And so that was when I decided I wanted to make an impact for a lot more rhinos than just 6 at a time. And that's what really kind of cemented policy for me.
How do the politics work in policy making? I know that, one of the things that animals, we love animals, but it's, to a lot of people in other countries, they're just, a byproduct. A resource.
Yeah. And that's also kind of what traveling helped change, or open my mind up to too, is that it's not a black and white issue, trafficking and the wildlife trade. It is very socioeconomic, economically based, and depending on what country you're in, it can be done for a host of reasons. The people on the ground aren't the ones making a ton of money. Like they're mostly in third world countries. They're making, I was in Vietnam and I saw a turtle trap in someone's backyard, or people fishing illegally in a national park. And it's like, okay, if they trap one turtle, then they can make enough money to feed their family for 3 months versus the work that they're going to do, for that amount of time. That's just a fraction, and they're going to keep struggling. And so you can't fault them for wanting to make a better life for themselves and their family, especially to survive, especially when the decisions being made around these natural resources are being done at a level that they are not really a part of. They're not privy to. The education isn't there. A lot of people in China aren't educated on the ins and outs of the harms of trafficking. We blast them for shark fin soup and all of this stuff in Eastern medicine, but a lot of them are very ignorant to the harm it causes by being a part of that. So, yeah.
Let's go back a couple of years. April 2022. After he passed away, what were the first days, first weeks, even the months afterwards for you?
They were sorry. I laugh as a coping mechanism. I
have the same thing, and my mom has the same thing.
Yeah.
And in an uncomfortable situation, I am laughing, and it's not that.
Yeah. Or then you do the opposite, where you're laughing and it turns into crying. Oh no, you're crying and it turns into laughing. It's freaks people out. But yeah, it's gotten me this far. So they were awful. They were the worst days of my life. Those days. I had a terrible, as relatively good a first week after losing your partner can be to suicide. I had an awful first week. I was in a lot of shock. I was angry. For the first time in my life, I had no appetite. I'd never experienced that before. And I couldn't stop talking about it. I was in so much shock that everything just was pouring out of me. And I immediately felt responsible to tell people in our circles who wouldn't know otherwise that Peter had left, to tell them. And I think within 3 days, maybe even 2 days of him leaving, I was calling our community in Brookings and informing them. And that was the worst idea I've ever had. And no one stopped me. No one knows how to do that. No one knows how to do grief in general, let alone in the way that Peter left. And so there was nobody there to tell me what to do or to guide me or to tell me that's not a good idea.
Right.
So I did a lot of things that weren't good ideas. And it was, I learned quickly that I actually didn't have to do those things. In a way, it helped me with boundaries, like really quick, because I didn't really grow up with boundaries, or like knowing what appropriate boundaries were. And people say some really stupid shit when you're grieving, and they want to be helpful, I think. But there's something about humans where they want to fix it or offer advice, or they want to comfort. And really, like, the only thing you can do in a situation like mine with Peter is be there with me, be there with somebody who's going through that, because there are no words, like nothing will make it better. And one person say, this list could go on and on, but I told them, and they said, I hope after he jumped, he regretted it. And that had not even crossed my mind, because I was stuck on seeing in my mind's eye him actually falling.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't gotten that far in my head, I guess. And that broke me. That like broke me for weeks. Yeah. And then I come to find out they do regret it. They did an article on survivors of jumping the Golden Gate Bridge, and every single one of them said, like, as soon as they hit the air, that they like had clarity, and it was too late. So that's why I see what Peter did is, I know it was a mistake. And 50% of suicides are impulsive. So yeah. I also was kind of forced to be the spokesperson really quickly, because actually what his old boss did with announcing his passing, through email and on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that, and I appreciate that he shut down the clinic, but him very thinly veiling who had died really cut my privacy short, and cheated me of that time, while I was then trying to protect like his parents from having to, lose their privacy around it.
Right.
But yeah, it was terrible. Yeah.
And what about grief? What did you learn from yourself when you went through this? Did you learn new things about yourself?
I learned how, and I'll say this with a definition, because I hate this word, and what I think a lot of people use this word in, but I learned how strong I am. And I use the word strong as a synonym for resilience. I don't use it as a, square peg round hole, like just push through, ignore your feelings kind of way. I see like the ultimate strength as acknowledging and recognizing your feelings and working through them to be able to move forward. So that's how I use the word strong in this context. I learned, I hate to say this, the biggest thing grief taught me was that, at the end of the day, the only person I can really rely on is myself. And I do hope that over time I feel differently, but it's very isolating, grief.
You had, I can't speak for you, but during that time, everybody was going through sadness. Personally, myself, I didn't know how to process this in the first few days. I was in shock. I still remember the phone call from Jay. I was driving, and she's like, "Are you sitting down?" And she's like, I'm listening to music, and I'm in a happy mood. And then she tells me that Peter passed away, and I was in shock. I didn't realize the gravity of it or what happened. And then after learning that it was through suicide, I was devastated. There's a frame up there of Anthony Bourdain. Growing up, I looked up to him, just, in the way of talking to people. And I still remember I was working at this GP practice, and my coworker comes up to me and she says, Anthony Bourdain passed away. And again, it was the same thing. I was sad. But then after learning that it was through suicide, I was just, again, devastated. And it kind of felt the same way. I looked up to Peter, you know, for his character, his moral character, his intelligence. And to lose someone like that, for me, it was very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Sometimes I just think like he was too good for our world. Like he cared too much. We didn't deserve him. He deserved more, and he had a lot of good left to do. And we lost a really good one, in him. And I shouldn't. I'm thinking about what I said. I'm learning about myself. I don't want to discount the people around me who were trying so hard and showing up when Peter left, because there were so many of you. There was you. There was like our whole community with District and his work, and then like my communities from the fellowship and other things, and like it, that support is what carried me through that time, despite the hard parts of then interfacing with people who are also grieving his loss in different ways and don't know what to do. I think I would have been a lot worse off had I not had all of the support from our friends.
When I met you at that time, you were working for Lap of Love. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For anybody who listens to Lap of Love, it's a service where,
in-home euthanasia.
At-home euthanasia.
Service.
Going through that, working at Lap of Love, that in any way kind of shape your emotions, post-grief, after grief, before the loss and after the loss?
A bit. I mean, just in the way that like I can no longer work at those sorts of places. I guess that's more the grief shaping how I can show up in vet med. But it's just interesting because, what I did with Lap of Love is the exact opposite of if like we were in a world where we had no choice, but that Peter had to die, like I would have loved for him to have the Lap of Love experience, like we should all be so lucky to go out the way our Lap of Love patients do. But his was not. It was the opposite of that. What helped me the most with processing why Peter went about his decision the way he did was my own experience with suicidality, and knowing and understanding why he didn't say anything. But yeah, I guess in terms of Lap of Love, we should all have. It was the opposite of what happened.
When someone loses a partner, that the other partner that's alive often lives in their shadows. What do you do to honor Peter, but at the same time still move forward as Chelsea?
I think a lot of that is in my advocacy work, to, have a suicide prevention barrier implemented on his bridge, which construction is supposed to start this month on that. Yeah. And I think about this a lot, in the early weeks, I was told a lot of things, given a lot of advice from people, well-meaning, and one of them that stuck with me was like, remember that you control the narrative.
Okay.
And I grew up with such a mentality of, don't be a victim. And people say, don't let this define you.
Uh-huh.
And I hope that my devoting this part of my life to Peter does not, come off as him losing him define me, because I don't think it does. I think it's honoring him, and it's a coping mechanism for me of adding to his legacy. Once that barrier's up and it's evidence supported, it's going to save lives, and that's going to be because of Peter. And that is the thing I want to focus on. The good things that are going to come because of him, and not the effect losing him had on me that brought those good things on.
Do you ever resent him for what he did?
Oh yeah. A lot, actually. It's interesting. Grief is not a straight, they have, how many stages of grief is it?
I think 7.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, because those stages of grief weren't made for people grieving. It was made for people with terminal illness who knew they were going to die, and those stages of grief that they went through. So it's a common misconception. And people would ask me that in the beginning of you can be mad at him. And I wasn't mad at him at all. I like I said, I understood, even though I didn't agree with it. Even though he probably wasn't in his right mindset, I wasn't either when I felt the way he did, but I still made similar choices to a point. And I just thought it's a mistake. And I know that it's such a dichotomy. Because you immediately think, oh my God, I didn't know this person at all. Who was this person that I was doing my life with? I thought I knew them so well, and I had no idea that they were going through this, that they were keeping all these feelings inside. But on the other side, I kept saying to myself, I am 100% sure that Peter loved me. And 100% sure that if he had known how his decision was going to affect me and Hugo and his whole community, he wouldn't have done it. And he wouldn't have done it, even if he wanted to. I know he wouldn't have done it. So you hold those feelings at the same time. What was your question? Resent him. Yeah. So sorry, this actually happens a lot, is when I start and I think it's because of the trauma. When I start talking about this, it's like my mind forcibly makes me lose my train of thought after a while. It happened a lot more in the earlier days. It's probably gonna happen now too. So all that is to say, in the last couple of years, I think a more forward-leaning emotion for me with Peter has been anger. And it doesn't mean I still don't feel the way I felt when he first left, where I understand, I know it was a mistake. I know, forgive is a strong word. I don't know. I really actually haven't thought about forgiveness a lot these years. I've just focused on understanding why he didn't do things differently. I still find my life incredibly difficult. Our dog is incredibly difficult, and caring for him and his issues has limited me in a lot of ways.
Okay.
And so most often the reasons I start getting resentful at Peter is that he, left me to take care of our dog that we had joint responsibility for, that we had agreed to raise and care for together. And it's not like Hugo was a walk in the park when he left, so he knew already that Hugo was a toughie. But at the same time, without Hugo, I wouldn't have been getting out of bed in the morning. People were texting me and trying to relate and saying, oh, I lost my partner to like an overdose and things. And I couldn't get out of bed for months. And even people saying that, it was like, wow, I wish I didn't have to get out of bed for months. Wow, I wish I didn't have intimate details about the night of Peter leaving. I wish like I didn't know all his like secrets or whatever. Like I just wish all these things, but getting out of bed or staying in bed was not an option for me because I had this little creature that depended on me. And that was what saved me in the early days when I didn't know if I was going to make it. I couldn't leave because I was never, I promised Hugo I would never leave him. Like, I know how this sounds, but I was never going to leave him like Peter left us.
Yeah. And that's the reason why animals play a big role in our lives. They, we get attached to them. I've honestly, after Peter passed away, I was going through a lot, breakup, financial issues. And, wow. I lost somebody I looked up to and I, thought about doing it. And I tried myself. I was unsuccessful.
Thank God. Thank goodness.
I took, a whole bottle of melatonin, a whole bottle of ibuprofen. And like, this is it. I don't want to be here.
Sorry.
And I had my dog Bravo, shithead somewhere here. And I was taking him back to my mom's house, and I think he knew. It was that day I honestly on the drive to my mom's house, he didn't want to leave the car.
Yeah.
And he's my mom's dog, if anything. So he's always very excited to get out of the car and just tell me to fuck off. But that day, no, he didn't. He was licking my face. He almost took the wheel of the car and just
drive you guys straight home.
After Peter passed away, did Hugo feel anything, you think?
I think he did. Hugo was so calm. He, his energy was something we had difficulty managing and managing his anxiety. And he was very reactive and just inactive in general. And all he did was sit by my side. I had, people coming in and out of our apartment, people he had never met, all the time. And he was so good for once. He just laid down next to me and he was like that for a long time. He knew something was up. Yeah. And he even looked for Peter for a long time. I would play videos of Peter and he would perk up. Unfortunately, he doesn't do that anymore, but he's very much an emotional support animal, and he was clued in for sure.
So you did a lot to help him with his own kind of grief,
Yeah. I tried.
I want to talk about religion. You recently converted to Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
What drew you to that part of your life?
Yeah. So in 2020, I took a 23andMe DNA test, and I was, scrolling through the disclaimers before they let you see the results. And like, oh my gosh, it was like 20 pages, and like half of it was about Ashkenazi Jews. And I was like, none of this applies to me. Oh my God, I just want to see what I am. And then I like got to the end and I clicked, agree or whatever. I won't sue you, I promise. And the first thing that popped up was Ashkenazi Jew. And I did a double take. I was like, are you kidding me? And so that was like the farthest. I mean, Peter and I were atheists now, at best, like I believe I have like a God concept of like the energy of the universe and all based in science and things, which the Jews do too. The Reform Judaism and like modern Judaism is really a lot more based in fact, which is what I like about it. So I, asked my family, and no one in our living family knew that we were Jewish.
A big discovery.
It was a big discovery. I mean, no one really cared as much as I did because like my whole family's atheist pretty much. But I started reading about it, and, I just wanted to learn more about it. And I started feeling this personal responsibility to keep the traditions going.
Okay.
I didn't grow up with a lot of traditions, in any sense of the word. And so the idea of all of the rituals and blessings and traditions in Judaism, I think, was very attractive to me because those things are very grounding. And, I realized that in the not so distant past, we were like 100% Jewish. And like, how did we so quickly lose our history? And, a lot of Jews had to assimilate to survive during the Holocaust. Holocaust was just like the big ending of, quote unquote, ending of persecution for Jews. Like they had been persecuted like that for thousands of years. And the reason, the reason the Holocaust was allowed to go on the way it did was a lot because no country would take the Jews. They had nowhere to go when they were being persecuted like this. So I just felt like for all of the skirting death that our ancestors had to do for us to be here, like what a slap in the face for us to just forget where we came from,
Right.
like, so that's really what, drew me to Judaism. And then at first I wasn't even telling Peter about it because I didn't think he would, be supportive or, which was silly of me, but like supportive or like think it was worthwhile because we were such stark atheists.
Right.
So I would do things for the holidays and stuff and not really like mention it, but he caught on and he was like, "Oh, can I make you kugel for, like the high holidays or, and Peter was raised Irish Catholic and he actually was educated in religion. And so the entire Torah is just what they call the Old Testament in Christianity. So he knew way more about it than I did. And he ended up educating me a lot, along the way.
He was an honorary Jew.
Yeah, he was an honorary Jew. And he would joke about like, "Oh, are we going to raise Hugo Jewish now?" I got Hugo a bow tie for Hanukkah and Peter like laughed about it. He found like the humor in it. And so when he left, I looked to Judaism as something to keep me grounded and also a way to keep me close to Peter because he had been very supportive of it. And it took 3 more years for me to convert, but that was kind of always what I planned on doing.
Judaism is one of those religions that you have to seek it, you have to want it. Did you find a new community when you converted?
I sure did. I found a lot of community. The Jews are great at community. You can't pray in a synagogue or really in any setting as a Jew unless you have a minyan, which is 10 Jews. So if you have to be in community to practice Judaism. And so through the first class I had to take before the conversion class and then the conversion class, and then the second one I had to take because I dropped out of the first one because I was still very heavily grieving and just couldn't do it with everything going on. I have met a ton of people in that community, and a lot of them are very close friends of mine now. And they were there for me when Peter left. We did a little shiva for him, I called it at the time. What's a shiva? A shiva is when you sit with your dead loved one for an amount of time. Now you're testing my Jewish knowledge here. How many days? I think it's a month. Yeah, you're supposed to sit with your dead loved one for a month.
Uh-huh.
Someone is supposed to be with them always for that whole month.
Okay.
And you practice honor a bunch of other rituals around like fasting and all this stuff. But there's also a lot of food involved, and we couldn't do a whole thing like that for Peter, obviously, but I did like connect with my rabbi, and my Jewish friends helped facilitate having like a little just ceremony for him that we called a little Shiva, where we read through the blessings in Hebrew and like talked about memories and stuff.
I spoke to Peter about religion. He was a very philosophical man. I still remember him being a very stoic person. In a way, he kind of practiced stoicism. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that meant for him? And
I have a big bone to pick with stoicism. I think it really, in his warped state, facilitated his suicide.
Okay.
How? I like had access to his search history and stuff after he left, and he was, he had gotten into stoicism in like the 6 months before leaving, and one of the last things he looked up was the story about Caleb the Younger, who killed himself, and he was a Stoic. I've read that story, and I still, this just speaks to how differently Peter was probably thinking at the time, but I still don't quite see how reading that could cement the idea that killing yourself is a good idea. But the Stoics didn't think much of life, and in Peter's state of mind, it was just confirmation that he didn't have to be here, and I hate that.
Did you ever see any signs before the loss?
Even looking back on it in these years, I still, I struggle a lot with blame, but I have this theory about blame where like the human condition is to want to like have the illusion of control.
Uh-huh.
And so we want to convince ourselves that we have control over so much more than we do.
Right.
And with that being the human condition, I think blaming yourself for the loss of a loved one, especially like this, is more a coping mechanism and just helping you survive that difficult time. Because if you accepted that you had no hand and you couldn't have changed anything, then that would be you admitting that you didn't have the control you thought you did. I look back on what could have been signs from Peter, and they're so minimal. He kept everything so close to his chest. I mean, more so than I ever could have imagined, obviously, but he was very stoic. And, I think even if I had shaken him the night he left and said, like, or asked, like, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Or like, I know you're thinking of hurting yourself. I don't think he would have told me. I don't think he would have strayed from his then plan in those final hours.
I struggled a lot, to try to understand what happened. I was asking myself questions. It was like, why did he do it? He's got a beautiful girlfriend. He's got a great job. He's got everything going for him, and for him just to end it was very still in shock. I still don't know why. in spirituality, in Judaism, what's the afterlife? Do you think of it differently?
The Jews don't think about the afterlife much, which I like. They really don't. They don't.
Once you pass, you pass.
Yeah, pretty much. They don't. It's not really talked about. There's like the idea of like heaven and hell isn't talked about, and that really lends itself to me to a very practical, like philosophy on life that, focusing on what you can do here and now is much more important to them. They don't really talk about angels. They don't talk about that stuff. I try to not think about death because ironically, given my own mental health history, years ago, I am more afraid of it now than I ever have been before. And I, have to catch myself from thinking too much about it because it's a real fear. And I hope in the years I have left, I can come to peace with it in a way that isn't because I want to escape pain.
In intimacy, how did you deal with that after he was gone? Did you feel like you were ever going to meet anybody else?
Oh God, no. I felt
you still feel that way?
Broken. I felt like no one was ever going to be able to relate to me or understand what had happened, and how it affected me. And I also still felt like I was with Peter. Like I didn't want, he like, friggin' one of my grief counselors was like, he like broke up with you in like the most final way possible. But that same grief counselor was then like, he was with you for the rest of his life. So I was like, what side of side of this are you trying to play here? I thought we were at the time, because of how I grew up, I didn't really have a lot of regard for the sanctity of marriage. So we weren't really focused on getting married, but he was my life partner. And I certainly do feel like a widow. And so after he left, I was like, I'm never going to be with anyone ever again, for a multitude of reasons. And, then loneliness kicks in. I think around like 14 months after he left, I was like really lonely. And you start thinking practically, especially with him and me being 30 at the time. And I'm not here to like cut my nose off to spite my face. It's like, I'm not, and a lot of widows do. There's, a lot of support groups, a lot of like groups online where people are alone for the rest of their lives. And how sad to be stunted in your own life in that way, to not allow yourself to experience love again in the ways that you can, and experience that kind of joy and safety again in the ways that you can, because that first plan didn't work out, and you had no control over it. Like, how sad. So yeah, I think I had been waiting to get to a point in my grief where I don't know if it was like me accepting that Peter had left more or what, but I didn't feel ready to meet people. But then I ended up meeting people when I least expected it. And yeah, things.
Would you ever put yourself in a position of vulnerability again, then in the way of love? I only say that because I have one of my best friends, his wife of 20 years passed away, and I love him to death. I really do. He's like a father figure to me. And, he goes on dates. He's gone on to like 200 dates at this point since I met him 5 years ago.
I feel for him.
And
rough out there.
And, you know, he's been vulnerable at certain points with certain partners, but I see that he's never fully committed. And, you know, I've never experienced that kind of loss, but I tell him, you know, do you ever think you're ever going to put yourself in that point again where you'll fully expose yourself to someone new?
Yeah. You know, I have multiple thoughts on this. First answer is no. Because I guess what also helped me get back into dating again was, you know, after Peter left, I was convinced, you know, I've felt enough pain for an entire lifetime and I don't deserve to feel any more pain ever again. And I don't want to. And so to put yourself out there is to open yourself up to the possibility of getting hurt. And so my thinking has morphed as, you know, maybe what it is we experience these massive like hits of pain or whatever amount of pain from, you know, someone ghosting you or a breakup or a betrayal. And all we do, like, we just have a period of time between those experiences where we build our resilience back up. Like, even if it still hurts, you build your resilience up enough because that takes your resilience away. That takes your fortitude, and you wait for it to, like, the meter to fill up again. And then you go again and you try, and hey, maybe you get hurt again. And then you gotta wait for the meter to fill back up, and like, fuck, all this pain is still here, but like you're still out there. Like, that kind of thing is more what I would regard as defining yourself by your loss. Mm-hmm. If you allow your loss to limit the ways in which you can experience life and glean joy from life for the rest of your life, mm-hmm. that is defining yourself by loss. And so I try to remember that when I get hurt, and then I just wait until I've forgotten how much it hurt, and then I try again.
You just got to keep going.
You do. You just got to, what else are you going to do? Just give up? Like, you can't just give up. You know, that's not how life works.
You stepped into an advocacy role for suicide prevention. You serve on the board of what?
I serve on the board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Their National Capital Area chapter.
Okay. And Thof too?
I was, and Thof has gone through a lot of changes recently. So really it's just AFSP right now. Yeah.
In that advocacy role, what's your mission?
To honor Peter and save lives. Like I said, I see it as contributing to his legacy, making good from the bad, which is like all you can do with bad is make good from it. I want his memory and him to be the reason people are, you know, the reason people's lives are saved.
You've done policymaking. What's the hardest thing to do when it comes to change at a, you know, macro scale?
The hardest thing to do at a micro scale, from when I started advocating for the barrier, is convincing people and actually like getting the right people to listen to you and to care. Really hard to get people to care. There's a lot of priorities out there. You know, I heard a lot of we don't care enough kind of rhetoric from people I needed to care.
Okay.
And, you know, the hardest part is devoting all of your energy to building up your cause enough that they can't ignore it anymore. And a lot of that is through campaigning and getting the public to care. Because once the public cares, the people that they, vote into power care a lot more. And so, and even if they did care, maybe it just gets prioritized. Like they already care, but it gets prioritized higher now. So that's the hardest thing at a micro scale. At the macro level, things move so slowly, and it is so difficult to get. I mean, I worked in international policy. Mm-hmm. It is so difficult to get all of the countries in like one UN convention because how the UN works is the different conventions don't include every single country in the world. It's like, it's most of the countries, but it's who's ever signed on to that convention to then, promise they will guide their country's policies by what the convention decides internationally. Mm-hmm. And, we can't even agree on definitions of words. So it gets really tough to make sweeping, lasting change in one foul swoop. It takes decades. And as long as you're okay with, your impact is going to be moving the needle like a tiny bit, but that tiny bit was for the whole world, mm-hmm. like then you'll be okay. But micro level is a lot more instantly gratifying compared to macro.
And it has to do with like your community, right? Like people, like you're advocating for, the veterinary community. In this field, I've been in it for about 10 years. We talk about mental health, but, most corporations, even private employers, they preach for it, but they don't advocate, they don't practice it. Mm-hmm. What would you say to, CEOs, executives, business owners out there to help their support staff veterinarian?
I would say to them, and I recognize that some corporations are getting better, but having been in the public sector on the government side of things uh-huh. and the clinical side, I think the biggest thing that's going to help veterinary mental health at large is corporations not trying to squeeze every dollar out of every veterinarian and like veterinary support staff that they employ. Huh. Like it's an easier fix than people think. And it's not adding on support. It's not, it can be educating on resilience and things like that. But baseline, to me, it's about your work-life balance is core to your mental health. Mm-hmm. And these corporations can like offer all the things that they want. If they're not offering at least 4 weeks of vacation, which is still not a lot compared to every other country in the world, basically.
European nations.
Yep. Not even just European, but certainly first world countries. Mm-hmm. And also, the full-time equivalent that is like an appropriate amount for a veterinarian and not shoving 15-minute appointments in an 8-hour day for the whole day, just things of that nature. Like just not putting as much pressure on their veterinarians. You have to employ more veterinarians maybe. And also I don't think that production should be in the veterinary, mechanism, pay mechanism at all.
You read my mind. That was my next question.
No, we should all just be getting a salary. And if that means the salaries actually need to be higher and appropriate to the worth of the veterinarian, it blows my mind that we are basically saying you can make commission off of this. You are a salesperson. Because What do we think of all the criticism we get from the public? How are we supposed to argue that criticism if our salary is based off of, selling more stuff, right. And it does, it will introduce a challenge for veterinarians to practice, the medicine, the gold standard of medicine that they want versus versus the enticing, possibility that they can make money off of a thing when they have so many loans, especially.
Yeah. And again, you keep reading my mind. Veterinarians come out of school with nowadays $500,000 in debt. It's even worse if you become a specialist. What's the fine line that corporations have to, there's production, there's salary, but this field is not as the human care where there's insurance and then they can bill the hell out of a patient. What would you say to pet owners out there for them to get the gold standard of care?
Well, unfortunately, because we do live in a society where corporations are doing production, I think the best thing a pet owner can do in this landscape is get pet insurance. And, it would be better. We would all be better off actually in this broken system that we have through capitalism. I'm not saying all capitalism is bad, but we're not in a good stage of it for sure. Whatever we founded our country on in terms of capitalism, it has gone off the rails in a way that we did not predict, I don't think. And it's screwing us all over. So, in this system, get pet insurance. Everyone's like, oh, they never get sick. That's the point. Like, stop thinking about insurance as like, it's going to save me if there's this huge emergency, and start looking at the value of it as peace of mind for that emergency.
Right.
Maybe your animal does live its entire life without any problems at all. Wow. But that's not how, hopefully with insurance, especially, your animal will live to a ripe old age because you will never be paying like the amount that people have to pay out of pocket.
Right.
When you get a good insurance plan, and they are going to start getting issues when they're older, and that's when your insurance is going to kick in too. And it's too late to get insurance then, because then they already have the pre-existing conditions. I have pet insurance for Hugo. I definitely wouldn't have been able to care for him if we didn't get pet insurance when he was a puppy. And he may already be dead if I didn't have pet insurance for him. So it certainly is peace of mind for me.
Who do you have for pet?
Pet's Best.
Pet's Best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. What made you go with that over any other provider?
We looked at a bunch of them when he was a puppy, and Pet's Best, it's a more expensive plan, but it covered basically everything but a kidney transplant, and that's what we wanted.
No dialysis.
Yeah.
Is that still covered or no?
I'd have to check again because it's been a while since I looked at the details, but it certainly covers our ER visits when he gets pneumonia constantly. So,
yeah, I'm sure. I want to, it's something that I didn't even write down, but veterinarians, I guess you can even say no to it, but what's your debt, right? I want to ask these questions to all the vets that come along, because I don't think people understand the number that veterinarians come out of vet school.
What's my debt right now? I think it's like $318,000 or something like that.
And do you ever think you're ever going to pay that off in your lifetime?
Part of the attractive thing with policy, and luckily it's what I wanted to do anyway, but I've been banking on the public service loan forgiveness program for my entire career. So I have 2 years and I need 8 more, and then my debt will be forgiven. So my next job is a state job, so it will also qualify for this PSLF. And so hopefully, in 8 years, it will be gone. And then I can maybe afford a house. Yeah, exactly.
A brand new car. Wow, that's a lot of money.
There is.
Wow. As we start to wrap up this podcast, what do you want people to remember about him? His mom says this more, way better than I say it. I think because I did experience that trauma from
from him leaving while they weren't, there.
Mhm.
But they're very good at focusing. His parents are very good at focusing on how he lived. And I want people to focus on how he lived also. In all the things we just said about him and in how caring he was, understanding, philosophical, thoughtful, creative, supportive, dependable, funny, just all we can take out of this life or leave, I guess really all we can leave behind in this life is how we made other people feel. And I know everyone that interacted with Peter felt good after. And so I hope, that's what he can be remembered for.
What does the future hold for you? What do you think it has?
Well, I'm moving to Vermont and I'm starting a new job as the assistant state vet there. I hope it's going to be a good change. I hope, despite leaving this community I've formed in DC over the last 5 years, leaving the place that I last saw Peter alive and that we had started our life together. And we're very, at least what we thought was going to be the early years of our life together. I hope I can find more silver linings as I go on. I certainly can't predict what the future holds. But I hope whatever it is, someone, when I was in high school, my friend's dad said to me, life is cyclic.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's going to be really low lows, but that means there's also going to be really high highs.
Mm-hmm.
And given everything that's happened in DC while I've been here, I feel like I'm still waiting for that really high or just a high. And so I just keep looking forward to good things whatever they are.
They will. I think they
Thanks,
will.
Rod. Yeah.
For someone, for people who are going through their downs at this point, where can they find resources to alleviate some of that pain?
Yeah. I mean, definitely in people that they trust, talking. I feel like the first line of defense with, poor mental health is going to be sharing your struggle and doing that with people that you trust who are going to be empathetic and supportive. Because if we all talked about our mental health more in a productive way,
mm-hmm.
then I truly feel, if we can talk ourselves out of dying by suicide in the general population,
Sure,
for the most part, if we could just talk about our feelings more and what we're going through. And then, resources like Not One More Vet they helped me when Peter left. They give grants to people who have lost loved ones to help them in those the aftermath, really. They have support services. AFSP is a national organization and they offer a ton of resources now that we have. Ironically, the 988 number came into being a month after Peter left. But 988 is a great resource for people, for acute crisis. And there are a lot of resources out there. And I just want people to remember that when they feel like they're alone and isolated, that they're not. Remember and it doesn't mean that things aren't hard, but nothing is worth your life. Nothing.
Chelsea, thank you very much for being on the pod. Your story is very special, and I really want the world to know it. And I also want the world to remember Peter for the great man that he is. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Rod, so much, and I appreciate. I see this as also adding to his legacy.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Means the world.
it.